Hello, everybody. Today, I would like to tell you the story of Rumpelstiltskin, but maybe not the story that you have all been familiar with. This one just kind of reveals a little bit about the greediness of the poor miller, the greediness of the king, the greediness of the poor miller's daughter, yet not the greediness of Rumpelstiltskin. Once there was a poor miller who always wished he had a part in the kingdom. Now, although he knew that this was almost impossible, he did everything he could to seem more important in the eyes of royalty. He would make up ridiculous stories about how he had magical powers, but every time they would test him, he would fail. And all of a sudden, he had an idea. Out of his desperation, he decided to take his daughter to the king's castle. And when he took her there, he asked to speak to the king. "Not you again," the king exclaimed at the sight of the poor miller. "What pathetic claim do you bring this time?" he said. And the poor miller answered, "Your Highness, I bring you my daughter. I can assure you that she can spin straw into gold." "Is that so?" the king asked. And he motioned the daughter and he said, "Come with me." And he locked her up in a tiny room full of straw, and he told her, "If you do not spin all of the straw into gold by tomorrow morning, I shall lock you up in the dungeon to die." And so he locked the door behind him and left her there. Now she didn't know what to do. So she started crying and crying and crying until suddenly a tall man appeared. And he asked her, "What's wrong?" And she said, "My pathetic, attention-seeking father told the king that I could spin straw into gold, and I can't." And he said, "What's your name, dear?" She replied, "Adina." "Adina, don't you worry. I shall spin the straw into gold for you. But for a price." "For a price?" she said. And he replied, "All magic comes with a price." So she offered her necklace. "I shall give you my necklace." He said. "Okay, but I have an even better idea. Why don't I teach you some of these magical powers? That way you can spin the straw into gold yourself." And she agreed, and so he did. And by the morning, the king was astonished and pleased at the sight of all the gold, and so he took the daughter out of the room and locked her into an even bigger room full of straw, more straw. And he said to her, "If you spin all of this straw into gold by tomorrow morning, you shall become my wife. But if you do not, I shall lock you up in the dungeon to die." And again, he closed the door behind her and left her there. Well, she thought, no worries, I'll just use the same powers that the tall man taught me, and I'll be able to spin all of the straw into gold. But when she tried to use her magical powers to spin the straw into gold, they were too weak. There was too much straw in the room. And so she started crying. And again, the tall man appeared. And he said, This is a lot of straw, and your powers are too weak to be able to turn it all into gold by tomorrow morning." And so she started crying even harder. "But don't worry," he said. "I can teach you more powers, more powerful powers, stronger powers, and you can spin all the straw into gold." And she said, "Of course." And he said, "But for a price." She said, "Anything." She was desperate. He said, "When you marry the king and you guys have a baby, you shall give me your firstborn child." So she agreed. And he did. He taught her all the powers that she wanted, and she was able to turn all of the straw into gold by morning. And the king again was astonished and pleased at the sight, and turned her in to his wife. So she became his wife, and she wore a crown. And soon they had a baby. And of course, that tall man was there to claim the baby. But no, she was so devastated. She was like, "Please, please do not take my baby. Is there anything that I could do?" So he gave her a chance. He said, okay, I will give you 3 days to try and guess my name. And if you do not by the 3rd day, your baby will be mine. So she agreed. And the first 2 days she came up with the most ridiculous names that she could possibly think of, but each time he just replied, nope, that's not my name. So one day, out of desperation, on the 3rd day, the queen sent out a servant into the forest to try and find the tall man. And deep inside the forest, the servant did find the tall man. He was deep in there, and he was kneeling next to a picture, holding a picture of a young boy. And he said to the picture, I may have lost you, son, but I promise you that I will not let my new daughter be torn away from my arms. I shall never use magical powers again, and I shall raise my daughter right. Or my name isn't Rumpelstiltskin. And so the servant ran back to the palace and immediately told the queen. And when the tall man appeared again to claim the baby, she had one last guess. Perhaps your name is Rumpelstiltskin. How could you possibly know my name, he said. And he ran out of the palace, never to be seen again. Except by the queen's daughter. Because he made a promise. He made a promise that he would raise that daughter. Except because of what happened on that 3rd day and the humiliation that he had to have, he raised his daughter, in the worst way possible. He raised his daughter to use dark powers and to make dark deals like the one that he made with her mother. And one day she used those dark powers to kill her own mother, to kill the queen. And that's the story of Rumpelstiltskin. Thank you so much for listening.